Hey there, it's Cynthia with the Dinner Fix. Today I'm going to be making a chicken and herb dumpling soup, which, as the name implies, is full of chicken, herbs, and dumplings. In addition to, vegetables, because you got to get those in. It's a great soup to make on a weeknight because it's easy to make, it's pretty quick to make, and it doesn't involve any overly complicated ingredients that you can't get in any grocer. So let me show you how to make it. So I have here a Dutch oven that I've been warming over just a medium low heat, to which I'm going to add 3 tablespoons of unsalted butter, and I'm just going to kind of eyeball it. Yeah, it's about 3. Should be just under half a stick. All right, so we're going to let that butter melt. And while that melts, let me tell you what else is going to go into this soup. So I have here half a cup of chopped onion, along with a 1/4 cup of some celery that I diced earlier. And I did this in advance so that we can just get this cooking pretty quickly. Kind of while that finishes melting, I'm just going to go ahead and throw this in. So we're going to cook our onions and our celery down for about 5 to 7 minutes until they are nice and soft and they are translucent but not brown. So again, that's going to take about 5 to 7 minutes. I am going to set a timer here, and meanwhile that butter is just going to finish melting in there. Now, while that's going on, I'm going to prepare our one of our vegetables actually. So I've got here a smallish skillet in which I'm going to cook some mushrooms. So I have here 5 ounces of mushrooms. Now these are sliced mushrooms. They don't need to be sliced. I got what I could find, which was these sliced ones. So I did rinse these. The package didn't say they were rinsed, but it struck me as odd that they would sell sliced mushrooms that weren't. But I'm just going to play it safe. So I gave those a rinse. And then I'm going to give these a coarse chop. They should be in about 1/4 inch-ish pieces by the time you're done kind of running your knife through them. So just giving those a chop as such. All right, that looks pretty good. Let's give these a stir. All right, this is pretty hot. We're going to add about a 1/2 tablespoon of olive oil to the skillet. And then we're going to add our mushrooms, and we're going to cook these mushrooms down for about 10 to 12 minutes until they're nice and golden brown. And it may look like a lot of mushrooms, but you'll quickly see that these are going to reduce probably by at least half in terms of their volume. Mushrooms contain a lot of water, and they're going to release a lot of water as they cook. So you'll see those shrink up pretty substantially. All right, so our celery and our onions are done at this point. As you can see, those are softened considerably. The onions are translucent. So we're going to turn the heat off on that back burner. And then I'm going to whisk in 3 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. And I'm going to make sure to incorporate this really well so we don't get big clumps of flour. What we're making at this point is a roux. And if you're not familiar with a roux, it's really the basis for all gravies. So it's pretty much butter, flour, that's kind of been cooked down, and then you add some sort of liquid, and it makes a thick sauce or a gravy, which is what we're going to be doing for this soup. This is a rich soup. It's not something I eat every day. I just kind of feel life is all about balance, right? Maybe one day you have a really rich soup, another day you go, a little lighter. There's no need to completely deprive yourself. All right, so our flour is incorporated. So we're gonna turn the heat back on. I have this over like a low heat, and we're gonna cook this, stirring it constantly for about 2 to 3 minutes. And what I'm looking for is the butter's gonna start, not the butter, the bread, not the bread either. The flour is going to start browning, and you'll notice that it's going to go from this kind of like off-whitish color that it currently is to like a golden brown. You'll also notice, or you'll start to notice that the smell of the flour is gonna go from like that raw flour scent to almost like a buttery cooked scent, and that's what you're looking for. We're basically trying to cook this flour in the butter before we incorporate anything else to it. So I'll leave that for a sec. Yeah, see how these mushrooms are starting to turn a golden brown? It's exactly what we want. But I do want to give these a stir so they don't burn. All right. Keep giving this a stir. Yeah, that's about ready. So the flour has kind of picked up this nutty scent almost. And that just comes as a result of cooking that flour down. So we're gonna add, well, a total of 3 cups of chicken broth, but we're gonna start off just by adding about a half cup, and you wanna whisk this in pretty vigorously. What you're wanting to make is a paste without getting like massive chunks of flour in the soup, right? If I were to just have poured all that broth in, I would wind up with a lot of liquid, lots of little chunks of flour, which is not what I want. I want to whisk this in so it forms like a smooth sauce by the time it's all been incorporated in. So we're just adding that broth gradually, whisking in after every addition, and then we're just going to finish whisking in the rest of the broth. With our broth incorporated, we're going to add half a cup of chopped carrots, which is about a carrot. Let's give these another stir. All right, these are done. So I'm gonna turn that off and take that off the heat. So we've incorporated our carrots, and we're going to cook this. We're gonna bring it up to a simmer. So let me turn the heat up on this, and we're gonna cook this for 5 minutes. All right, so I've set a timer. Meanwhile, let's work on some of the other ingredients that we're gonna be incorporating into the soup. So I have a bowl here with a couple of different herbs that I've already washed in advance. So I have here some parsley, some thyme, some chives. We're gonna just give all of these a chop. So for our parsley, we want this finely minced. All right, so that looks pretty well minced. I'm gonna just take a bench scraper, and I'm just gonna move this off to the side because we're gonna be needing some of it here in a minute. And let's move on to our chives. So for this recipe, we're gonna need a total of 3 tablespoons of chives, but we're not gonna be putting them all into the soup at the same time. They're gonna go in at different stages, but I'm just gonna go ahead and chop them all up right now because, well, why not, right? All right. I think I'm gonna need a bit more. All right, so just push those off to the side. And then finally we have our thyme. Thyme is a bit tedious to chop because when you're chopping thyme, you don't want the stem, which is really woody. So you have to remove the leaves. So I just kind of run my fingers down the length, break off that top little part. Yeah, sometimes you can't like run your finger from the top down because the top part of the stem is still really tender. So you can just break that off, it's fine. All right, so let's give that a chop. All right, so our carrots have been cooking for 5 minutes. We're going to add those mushrooms that we cooked earlier to our Dutch oven here. And along with that, we're going to add some cubed up cooked chicken. And this is just chicken that I poached earlier, but if you have like just leftover chicken, rotisserie chicken, really any kind of chicken, go ahead and just cube that up. You can shred it too if you prefer shreds. Add that to our soup along with some frozen peas. And we're gonna add about a tablespoon of those chives, a tablespoon of the parsley, and then 3/4 of a teaspoon of thyme, which is about half of this thyme. And then we're gonna season to taste with some salt and pepper. So I'm gonna add here a teaspoon of salt, a couple of cracks of black pepper, okay, give that a stir. All right, so we're gonna cook our soup for about 30 to 40 minutes, just until the soup is thickened up and a lot of those flavors have come together. So I'm gonna set a timer here for 30 minutes. And then I'm gonna show you how to make the dumpling component of the soup. All right, so our soup has been cooking for about 10 minutes. So I did a little bit of cleanup and then also assembled the ingredients we're gonna need for our dumplings. So I have here some flour and some cornmeal, to which I'm gonna add some kosher salt, a little bit of sugar, and some baking powder. I can get that all out. It's not cooperating. All right, that's good. And we're just gonna give this a whisk to combine. All right. We're gonna add the remainder of all those chopped herbs that we had previously chopped into the mix as well. And then we're gonna add some heavy cream, okay? So we're just gonna stir that in. Get all that goodness out of there. All right. Just gonna stir this until it's incorporated. It's okay if it looks a little messy. Actually, I think I'm gonna switch to my spoon. I think the whisk was a good tool for mixing the dry ingredients, but now that this is starting to get thick and a little messy, I think the spoon is gonna be better suited to the task. So it's gonna be a really thick kind of dough. So don't be afraid if you're having to, kind of put some work into it. That looks pretty good. So we're gonna take, I have this little scooper here. If you don't have a scooper, you can just use a tablespoon. And we're gonna drop this into little balls all throughout. Just kind of try and disperse those as best you can. It smells so good in here. I'm very excited to eat. All right. Eventually you're going to get to a point where maybe you can't, you're running out of room, and that's okay. It's okay if some of these join up. Just do the best you can to keep them apart in individual little dumplings. Let's see. Stick that one there. Perfect. All right, so we're gonna clamp the lid on this and we're gonna let that cook for about 20 minutes. There's 17 minutes left on my timer, so I'm just gonna let this go a little over the beeping time, but basically you wanna cook this until the dumplings are cooked through, and that's gonna take about 20-25 minutes. All right, and there goes our timer. So we're going to go ahead and check our dumplings, which at this point have been cooking for 20 minutes. And what we're looking for is these dumplings should look firm. And I think these are gonna need another 5 minutes. Yeah, these are gonna need a little bit more time. They still look a little doughy in the center. They look like they might, yeah. See, if you start to kind of poke at them and they look like they might fall apart, they're not quite done yet. So we're gonna let those cook for another 5 minutes. Clamp, oh, actually, no, it's not that, no, that's hot. We're gonna clamp the lid back on, let those cook for 5 minutes, and then we're gonna taste. All right, so our 5-minute timer just went off on those dumplings. So I've turned the heat off. I'm just gonna move our Dutch oven off the heat and let's take a look. Yeah, those look pretty well cooked. As you can see, it's bubbling. The dumplings have firmed up. This soup is ready to eat. So we're just gonna ladle this into bowls. Really simple on the presentation here. We're just gonna ladle this in, being careful not to destroy those dumplings you so painstakingly made. Actually, there was nothing painstaking about it. But like I was saying earlier, you can see the soup's thickened up. It's not quite like chicken noodle soup or chicken and dumpling soup. It's not quite a chicken pot pie. It's like if the two of those got together, made a baby, that's exactly what you're eating now. We're gonna be eating now. So let me get a spoon and give this a taste. This is piping hot. I certainly recommend you let this cool off for a few minutes before you eat it at home, but my tummy is grumbling. And this does smell amazing in here. Oh, hot. That's really good. It's really good. As you're eating the soup, you're getting just the onions, the herbs, the butter, the cornmeal, and the dumplings, and it's really a party in your mouth. As you saw, this wasn't like a very complicated soup to make. It does take a little more time than most of the meals I'm making on a weeknight, but it's certainly worth the effort, so I encourage you to make it at home. I'm gonna keep eating, and until next time, enjoy.